have walked a lot in the mountains of Iceland, and as you come to a new valley, as you come to a new landscape, you have a certain view. If you stand still, the landscape doesn't necessarily tell you how big it is. It doesn't really tell you what you're looking at. The moment you start to move, the mountains start to move.
So, if I would say landscape architecture in Iceland, it's strong, but it seems that, and it's not only here, it's all over the world. It's so hard to say, yeah, I'm a landscape architect. Yeah, and what do? Are you collecting flowers and putting them in the private gardens? Ordinary people, they don't know that much about the profession, and that's maybe something we have to change, and we have to change it by ourselves. We have to go more out, have discussions about open spaces and why we're doing it, and let people know that there is a lot of knowledge behind the work that we're doing. And if you take that into the context of Icelandic landscape architecture, until 2001, everybody who have education in landscape architecture had to study abroad, and over half of them studied in the Nordic countries, and others went to the States or to Germany or England, and we bring all those ideas back to Iceland, those ideas from different countries, but we have to implement it in our society and in our nature. Some people think, why do you go abroad to study it? But actually, landscape architecture is a global thing. You're actually doing a lot of same things all around the world, but you just have a different context. You just have a different situation.
Well, Kenneth Frampton, he came once to Iceland, and I was one of the people that invited him to give a lecture here, and I think it was in 1987 or 88, and it was during the middle of the winter, and I remember what his impression of Iceland was. He said, you know, Iceland is really fascinating for what could be built, perhaps more so than what has already been built. And that, in my opinion, was a very nice thought, because it's opening up potential. You know, architecture in Iceland is a relatively new thing. I think the Marshall House project is a brilliant intervention into the city. It is really taking this idea of the cultural forum in this active harbour one step further. The architects of Kurtan P, who were in charge of this project, you know, they didn't just design it, they initiated it. They came to the company, they got the idea that this building there would be a great place for an art center. They contacted the two galleries and Ólafur Eliasson. They went to the directors of the greatest fishing plants in Iceland who owned this building, didn't know what to do with it, and said, will you put down money to complete this building and make it into an art center? Then we will provide you with people that will fill it with activities. And the fishing company said, okay. So I think it's a wonderful example of the potential of architecture. If architects are, you know, going beyond just sitting in their studio and waiting for a job, but becoming actually initiators and activists, you know, thinking out how things could happen and combining people from different branches of society to make potentially new things. Not just the building, but also to fill the program and fill it with life, and to improve the city as well.
I think that in the future, public art is going to be more of a collaborative project, maybe between artists, architects, landscape architects, and even theorists who dealing with social issues, people that are interested in the social issues of individual areas in the city. So, you know, you can see in the future that there will be public artworks that are not only based on the thought of the artist, but also, you know, dealing more with how the work relates to the architecture and the people living in the area.
We have been some accidents with snow and avalanche. This is because of the change in weather, and this started in 1990, and we had some incidents, 2 or 3 of them, where people also got killed. And then we started to think, are we going to get rid of those villages? Are we going to move everybody out, or are we going to keep the people there? And then we started to build avalanche protections. And that's where landscape architects came in with our skills, and together with engineers and architects and other professionals, we have been working closely with them. And it's not just avalanche protection. We change these areas into public space, open space, so it can be used. It's not just collecting the snow or putting the snow somewhere else when it comes from the mountains. It's used by people. And then we come again to the point where I said, it's about the people. It's about the users. And that's what avalanche protection is also about, to get people involved, let them maybe give some ideas what should be done, and then we implement it.
Well, I think it's really a luxury working here, is that you don't have to specialise. Basically, there isn't that much to do, so you do whatever comes into the office. If somebody says, do you want to design a summer house? You say, for sure. If somebody says, will you design a bridge? You say, for sure. If somebody says, will you design a city hall for me? Well, you don't turn that down either. You're doing all these different kinds of buildings, and then you can learn from them. And so maybe the bridge starts informing how you do a private house, and maybe that starts informing how you make a school. And that's a luxury that we have working in this tiny society. In 1987, we were so fortunate to win the competition for the City Hall of Reykjavik, which is this building here. At that time, Margaret and my partner were pretty much straight out of school. We've been in offices for 3 years, so we were only 26 and 27 years old, and to win one of the most important commissions of the nation was actually quite a challenge. So we were really thankful for both the jury to choose our scheme, and then also for the city to actually commission us to the building. 4.5 years after the competition, the building was finished. And it's still here 25 years later, and it's always a joy to go back and actually realise that it still exists and still doesn't leak. We're standing here in the City Council chamber of the City Hall. The importance of this room is that it actually has only 3 walls that are in the room. The 4th wall, because it's made of glass, actually opens the room to the city. So the city is in effect the final wall of the room, which means that everybody in the city is allowed to be in this room when decisions have been made. And that way we hope to encourage an open democracy, which is something that Iceland has always stood for. And if anyone has been to the first parliament in the world, in Thingvellir, they'll understand how important democracy is to the core values of Iceland. Here in the Kringland car park, or the car park at Kringland Shopping Mall, we've got 2 levels of car parking, and the task is to make the most economical car park that you've ever seen, but at the same time make some place that you'd want to be. So what we try to do is to take everything down to its absolute minimum. The structure is as thin as possible, the spans are as great as possible, as column-free as possible. And we can do that by using highly efficient structural methods such as precast post-tension concrete slabs. By using that very simple device, we actually can then make a little bit of space both in the budget and in the physical plan of the car park to have places like this garden. And this garden also serves the purpose of bringing light to the low level and also receiving water from the upper level, so that these trees can grow in a healthy environment that's carbon rich. So they actually flourish much more, much better than they would in a normal environment. And that also gives us something nice to look at. So you're not only looking at the backsides of cars, you're looking at something that is there all year round and changes. For me, I think this project more or less sums up what we're trying to do with our architecture.
Budova byla vyprojektována se slavným islandským architektem Gudmundurem Jonssonem v letech 2004 až 2006 a byla slavnostně otevřena roku 2009. Stavba byla designovaná jako pavilion pro vikingskou loď, pro kopii vikingské lodi s doprovodnou expozicí, s interaktivní prezentací a kinosálem. Vikingská loď je naším hlavním artefaktem, naším hlavním objektem. Vyplňuje ústřední prostor hlavního sálu. Budova je přímo samotným architektem interpretovaná jako dvě vlny, které se vzdouvají oproti stěně. Pokud stojíte na palubě na lodi, tak máte pocit, že právě vyplouváte na širé moře.
Harpa was a political decision to keep on building it when the financial crisis came, and very much debated. And you know, people had this idea that you were building this elite concept, this elite building, but it became a place where everybody goes. The variety of people visiting Harpa is great. So, and it's a very active place in the city, and I think it has earned its place as a site, both visually and as a work, you know, as an active concept. It's a very significant part of the town, and if we would not have finished it, it would always be something to remind us of a failure, a big failure. And also, I mean, it gave jobs to quite a lot of people.
It was a controversial building. It was not everyone who agreed to spend all this money to complete this expensive building, but it has actually proven itself very well. It's a wonderful music hall, and the great thing about it, I think, is that it is, unlike many such facilities abroad, it is very open to the public. You can come there at any time of the day, and it's always open. And that's actually something that the downtown of Reykjavik really was missing. It didn't have any built public space. So I think that aspect of it has been very successful.
And for us to keep on building this was a very important and positive decision, because else we would have this like a sore always reminding us of this the collapse, which was, I mean, it was painful for this nation, but you know, I think we have recovered in a marvelous way, and probably the tourists have helped us quite a lot. It's also, I mean, the atmosphere is now that there are more possibilities, and hopefully this will, you know, bring us good public art and good architecture, also serving this new industry that's kind of overflowing in this country, that's the tourism.
It was thanks to the tourism that the Nordic country got out of the financial crisis that hit it in 2008. In that time, Iceland was in debt and was saved by a loan from the International Monetary Fund. 3 years ago, tourism became Iceland's main export business when it overtook fishing. In 2017, tourists were estimated by the island's Banki Bank to spend more than 5.1 billion, which is roughly half of the country's export earnings. We have to be careful not to fall victim to our own success. Some places are not suitable for accommodating of millions of visitors each year. If we let even more people come here, we will lose what makes these places exceptional.
Yes, I think in terms of if you want to receive tourists, you have to somehow design for it. It cannot just happen. It has been the case with Iceland that you just think, okay, let's make nature pure, people come to see the pure nature. But with this amount of tourism, you have to deal with the crowd. You have to think about how you organize the spaces. There are certain needs and that you have to fulfill, and that's how design comes into play. So I think, referring back to Kenneth Frampton's words, I think there is an enormous potential. I think much greater potential even than we have already realized. But I think Icelandic tourism is at its sort of early stage, like a lot in Iceland, like architecture in general is in an early stage. So I think it will. I'm optimistic that it will develop in a positive direction.
Geothermal energy has been preserved in the core of the Earth since its inception throughout geological history. At present, more than 10,000 megawatts are installed worldwide in geothermal power stations, which is still an unparalleled fraction of the overall potential. It's the oldest energy on our planet. Geothermal energy is a manifestation of the thermal energy of the Earth's core, which arises from the breakdown of radioactive substances and the effects of tidal forces. Its manifestations are the eruption of volcanoes and geysers, hot springs, and steam spouts. Within Europe, of course, Iceland is the most suitable country for geothermal energy. The unique geological conditions in Iceland make it possible to produce electricity from renewable sources at a relatively low cost, and to use many sources. Iceland is located in the area of the Central Atlantic Ridge, which is one of the most tectonically active areas in the world. There are over 200 volcanoes and over 600 thermal springs. Many hot ponds reach temperatures of up to 150 degrees Celsius. These specifics allow us to take advantage of this energy and use it for everything from heating homes to the warming of swimming pools.
This power station, geothermal power station, started in 1991, and the infrastructure you can see here behind us are boreholes. The igloo huts are boreholes, and then there are steam pipes leading towards the power station. And it's a type of energy infrastructure which is very, very difficult to hide, but it is also very, very important for quality of life here in Iceland, because if it wouldn't be for the hot water, we use it both for heating up our houses, we use it for bathing, all our swimming pools have geothermal hot water, then the quality of life here would be severely diminished. I think for a lot of people that makes it easier to live with. So even though it's a bit kind of aggressive in the landscape, it also means a very good quality of life for us. We did one 17 years ago for this area, and a lot has changed in Iceland in the past 17 years, especially in the last 7 years or so with the tourist boom. So now we are kind of drawing a new line, a new baseline for the area, and create a comparison for the one that we did 17 years ago.
Icelandic landscape is very sensitive, very prone to erosion. So the more people that visit the area, the harder it is on the landscape. And we can actually see this not on this side of this volcanic mountain range here behind me, but on the other side, the south side, there is a hot river, and this used to be kind of like a secret hot river for Icelanders. But now it's really busy, and we have seen that we need to develop it more, and we actually need to put in more infrastructure than we used to have, just to take better care of the nature. So on the other hand, it's going to end up more man-made than it used to be. But yeah, on the other hand, we are also just trying to save the nature from more erosion, etc.